Revenge stories are a dime a dozen, but few hit as hard as Kyle Crane's return in Dying Light the Beast. 13 years after Haran, Crane isn't just back, he's changed, scarred by experiments that left him half-human and hell-bent on tearing down the Baron's empire. The Beast doesn't try to reinvent zombie games. Instead, it strips the series back to what worked in 2015, and then builds on that with sharper combat, a tighter world, and the most memorable story Techland has ever told. I pushed through every side quest, unlocked every skill, slaughtered 666 enemies in beast mode, and tracked down every last collectible hidden in Castor Woods. After reaching 100% completion, I can say that this is Dying Light at its very best. Bloody, brutal, and uncompromising. Now, before we get stuck in, I just want to say thank you to everyone who watched the Silksong review and left a like or subscribe to the channel. The response to that video has been absolutely breathtaking, and I can't thank you enough. Now, let's get nerdy. Castor Woods is a bold shift for the series. Where Haran and Villador gave us sprawling cities filled with rooftops and alleys, the Beast drops us into a rural European valley. Forests, lakes, villages, and ruins stitched together by winding roads and cliffsides. On paper, you might think that this sounds like a downgrade, but on the contrary, it creates the most atmospheric playground Techland has ever built. Old Town anchors the region with the vertical density fans expect, letting you sprint across rooftops and pull off those iconic parkour chains. But the magic of Castor Woods lies in how varied it feels beyond the urban core. Creeping through a rotten asylum, navigating flooded caverns with nothing but a flashlight, or sprinting across farmland as the sun dies and volatiles start to stir. Each biome brought its own rhythm and tension. Verticality hasn't been abandoned either. Cliff faces, radio towers, castles, even swamplands all find ways to test your traversal skills. And the grappling hook and vehicles return to keep travel flowing. I found myself constantly rewarded for going off the beaten path. Optional safe zones, hidden relics of the town's past, and haunting environmental storytelling gave weight to every detour. Techland also kept the scope under control. Instead of bloating the map with filler, side quests and points of interest unlock gradually, woven between story chapters. And that pacing makes Castor Woods feel alive, dangerous, and worth combing through without the fatigue that sets in during Dying Light 2. In doing so, the setting doesn't just support the gameplay loop, it actually enhances it, grounding the horror in a place that feels both real and mythic. And this made me feel like for the first time in many years, I wasn't just playing Dying Light for the mechanics. I wanted to see what secrets this valley still had to give. Dying Light the Beast wastes no time reminding you who Kyle Crane is. 13 years after the following, he's dragged out of Haran and experimented on by the Baron, a farmer industrial tyrant straight out of pulp horror. The result? Crane is now half human, half infected weapon, equal parts survivor and monster. It's not a subtle premise. This is revenge with a capital R. But it works because Techland finally gives Crane space to be more than a blank slate. Roger Craig Smith leans into the performance with wary sarcasm and flashes of rage, turning Kyle into a protagonist I actually wanted to follow. His impatience at yet another climb, his dry one-liners, his moments of doubt, it all grounds a story that could easily have slipped into camp. The Baron himself is predictable. The kind of sneering villain you know you'll eventually face down in a lab full of neon vials. But the road to that confrontation is held up by the people of Castor Woods. Survivors are given weight here, a grieving father consumed by guilt, siblings trying to reconcile in a world that no longer allows goodbyes, and an old woman determined to leave her story behind. Side quests often cut deeper than the main plot, which pulled me into small tragedies and fleeting connections that reminded me why Dying Light has always been at its best when it focuses on the ordinary people. Thematically, the story circles around control. over the infection, over survival, over what it means to stay human when you're anything but. Watching Carl wrestle with his new abilities, flipping between beast and man, made him feel less like an untouchable superhero, and more like a volatile force barely holding the line. That tension gave narrative context to the gameplay loop, and it's the closest the series has come to stitching its systems and its story into something cohesive. No one's going to call this the greatest zombie game plot ever told, but compared to Dying Light 2's meandering nonsense, made the Beast's tighter scope and sharper character work a story worth seeing through to the end. Moment to moment, the Beast is still Dying Light at its core. First-person parkour stitched together with melee combat that's equal parts crunchy and chaotic. The fundamentals haven't changed. You're still sprinting across rooftops, chaining wall runs, and lining up dropkicks that still feel ridiculously satisfying after a decade. What has changed though is the rhythm. Castor Woods isn't the dense vertical sprawl of Haran or Villador. It's a patchwork of farmland, forests, small towns, and industrial ruins. That shift forces you to approach traversal differently. There are still pockets of verticality, like clock towers, smokestacks, and cliffside structures, but often you're weaving between open spaces, driving trucks through back roads, or clambering over jagged rock faces. Vehicles return, though they are slower and more utilitarian than the following's dune buggy. Grappling hooks are back too, with mixed execution. They're powerful but demanding. Less a safety net, more a precious tool that asks you to nail timing and momentum. Combat leans hard into gore tech. Limbs shear off with clean strikes, jaws dangle, skulls pop, and intestines spill in ways that are disturbingly detailed. It's not spectacle gore like Dead Island 2, it's more surgical, almost too real at times. Pair that with the return of weapon mods, electrified machetes, flaming sledgehammers, toxic baseball bats, and every encounter is as much about creativity as it is about survival. Durability is harsher this time around, forcing constant repairs and tough calls about when to retire a favorite weapon. It makes scraps valuable and every crafting upgrade feels truly earned. And then there's Beast Mode, the game's headline feature. By dealing and taking damage, you fill a meter that lets Kyle cut loose, ripping arms off, crushing skulls with bare hands, or leaping impossible heights. At first it feels like a cheat code, an instant win button. But the more I played, the more I realized it was less about domination and more about desperation. Beast Mode often saved me when I was cornered, bleeding, and seconds from death. It's a pressure valve, not a crutch, and the incremental skill upgrades tied to Chimera bosses slowly turned it from uncontrolled outbursts into something tactical. Day-night cycles remain the backbone of tension. By day, you're confident scaling buildings and brawling through hordes, but when night falls, the volatiles own the map, and suddenly every footstep is a gamble. Night is harder here than it's ever been before, especially in the forests where line of sight is limited, and those chases into UV safe zones never stop spiking my heart rate. What struck me most is how the Beast pairs things back compared to Stay Human. No gliders, no endless faction checklists, no bloated Ubisoft style map. Instead, it's leaner, scarier, and more focused on survival. That restraint makes the mechanics hit harder because you're not distracted by gimmicks. You're surviving with what you've got, and the game feels sharper for it. And of course, as the channel name would suggest, one of the ways that I judge Dying Light games isn't just by how it feels in the moment-to-moment gameplay, but by what it feels like when you've seen absolutely everything, when you've combed through every corner, ticked every box, and earned that sweet 100%. And in that respect, the Beast is probably one of the best completionist experience Techland has ever put together. There are 30 achievements in total. And the big difference compared to Stay Human is that none of them feel like they exist just to waste your time. No ultra-marathon grinds, no achievements that demand multiple playthroughs, nothing so obscure you need a spreadsheet open just to track your progress. Instead, everything is designed to nudge you into engaging with the game's systems, its world and its side content. By the time you hit 100%, you've actually experienced the game, not just farmed it. The story-related ones are the easiest, with achievements like Free at Last, Largo Embargo, Enhanced Telepathy, There You Are, and finally Glimpse into the Future. These just unlock as you play through the campaign. They are mile markers more than anything else. A way to track the story beats as you push forward to the finale. Nothing to stress about, nothing missable, just steady progress. Then you get into the skill and combat challenges, and these are where things get fun. Iconic has you dropkick enemies, which is basically unavoidable because, let's be real, everyone tries the dropkick the second they remember it's in the game. Gunslinger, on the other hand, forces a bit more finesse. 6 revolver headshots in 20 seconds. It sounds scary, but set yourself up with a group of slow zombies, pace your shots, and it's actually kind of satisfying when you pull it off. The Blacksmith achievement wants 50 weapon repairs, which you'll get naturally because durability is always a pressure point. And then there's the infamous Hexa Kosioi Hexa Contexa Hexa, asking you to kill 666 enemies in Beast Mode. That sounds like a grind, but Beast Mode is so central to survival that you'll rack up these numbers without even thinking about it. Exploration has its own set of highlights. Crane on a Monument has you scale the highest structure in Castor Woods, a real callback to the tower climbs of the original game, where Saphir and Then There Was Light gives you credit for activating safe zones and transformer stations, which is something you'd be doing anyway, but farming them as achievements adds that little dopamine hit. And then the collectibles. Know what Castor means, what happened at the Asylum, family picture, and don't forget to wash your hands. Each category feeds into the big meta achievement, Cabinets of Curiosities. What makes these worth chasing is that they aren't just junk on a checklist. They actually deepen the lore. Audio tapes, podcasts, newspaper clippings, Asylum records all serve the purpose to give you a stronger sense of what Castor Woods was before everything went to hell. And finally, the side content. The Good Samaritan achievement asks you to do every side quest, and honestly, many of those are more memorable than the main campaign. Kylan McCrane tests your driving skills by asking you to gold medal every race, which takes some mastery but feels like a proper capstone challenge. And then you've got the Ultimate Survivor and Ultimate Beast, which are all about maxing both skill trees. That to me is the moment where the 100% completion really lands, when you've explored the full spectrum of Crane's humanity and infected halves. What really impressed me was the pacing of all of this. Unlike Stay Human, where completionism felt like drowning in icons, the Beast doles things out naturally. By the time I was chasing down the last collectibles, I wasn't groaning, I was genuinely curious about what little fragments of history I was about to uncover. By the time I maxed out both skill trees, I didn't feel overpowered. Instead, I felt like I had genuinely mastered the systems. It took me dozens of hours to polish everything off, but it never felt like a waste of time. In fact, the Beast makes the case that completionism can be a design philosophy in and of itself. That 100% completion can be less about box ticking and more about actually seeing the game in full. Dying Light the Beast is about restraint and release. For most of your time in Castor Woods, you're scrambling for scraps, fighting tooth and nail with weapons that feel like they might break in your hands, and running from volatiles that could end you in seconds. And then, every so often, the beast inside Kyle cuts loose, and you become the monster. Those spikes of power, contrasted with the constant fragility of survival, gave the game a rhythm that's far more engaging than I expected. Is it perfect? No, not at all. The main story leans heavily into B-movie horror tropes, the central villain is serviceable at best, and then there were a few mechanical edges, with clunky climbing and repetitive boss variants. All of those things remind you that this is a spin-off turned standalone, rather than a full-blown reinvention. But it's also the most technically stable a Dying Light release has ever been. The combat has never felt better, and Castor Woods is the most atmospheric and varied playground the series has offered. From my perspective as a completionist, it's almost a masterclass in design. 30 achievements, all achievable in one run, each one pushing you deeper into the systems and the world. Nothing felt like filler, nothing wasted my time. And by the time I hit 100%, I felt like I actually lived inside the game, not just checked it off. For me, The Beast is the truest sequel to the original Dying Light, a course correction after Stay Human, and the most fun I've had with the series in years. And that's gonna do it for this one, nerds. Thank you so much for watching. I always do appreciate that. Please leave me a comment down below, like the video, subscribe, share with your friends, all that good stuff. And of course, until I see you again, stay nerdy.